Russia wants to build a drone empire. It's not just buying up drones in large quantities from Iran, but it's also building its own drone production plants, hoping to create tens of thousands of drones a year to pile more pressure on Ukraine and wear down the country's defenses bit by bit. But Ukraine isn't letting Russia get away with it. One target at a time, Ukraine's armed forces are striking back, destroying the Russian drone empire and disrupting President Vladimir Putin's plans for total domination. To understand the importance of the latest successful Ukrainian strikes, it's necessary to first look at the context of the war and how much it has changed from its early days and weeks. Back in 2022, when Russian troops began their illegal march over the border, the early stages of the war were quite conventional. There were trenches, troops, tanks, and armoured vehicles, with bursts of gunfire and artillery exchange between the two sides as the Russians fought to take land and the Ukrainians battled valiantly to defend it. Drones were part of the conflict back then too, but not a particularly large part. Indeed, some months passed away with barely a dozen Russian drone strikes in total. But as time has passed, drones have become increasingly important. Russia has grown to rely on them far more heavily than it once did, to the point that drones are now responsible for a staggering 70% of all Ukrainian casualties. And the number of attacks is rising rapidly as the conflict continues. In 2024, for example, Ukraine had to contend with an average of 959 drones each month. In the first half of 2025, that number grew to an astonishing 3,453 drone strikes per month, with a record 5,438 Russian drones targeting Ukraine in June alone. Thankfully, Ukraine has a strong selection of state-of-the-art air defense and anti-drone systems to rely on. Some were provided by allies around the world like Germany and the US, while others have been developed domestically in another inspiring demonstration of Ukrainian ingenuity and innovation. These systems often succeed in bringing down the vast majority of Russia's drones and missiles. But some drones still make it through and strike their targets, damaging buildings, destroying important infrastructure, and leading to both injuries and deaths among the population. This is all part of the Russian strategy. Putin wants to overwhelm Ukraine, to bombard the country with brute force, to send literally thousands of drones over the border towards any targets he can find, including those deep into Ukrainian territory, not just along the front lines or in contested regions like Luhansk and Donetsk. He understands that Ukraine will be able to bring down most of his drones, but he also knows that some of them will successfully sneak through and strike their targets. What's more, the Russian president will also understand the psychological impact of drone warfare on the population. Almost every night, air raid sirens ring out across Ukraine. People are forced to flee their homes and take shelter wherever they can find it, huddling close to neighbours and children, hearing the distinctive, intimidating buzz of drones overhead, waiting and wondering if they'll survive the night as explosions and fires break out. It's impossible to imagine the fear those people must experience, and with Ukraine currently facing record levels of civilian casualties, with more than 6,700 people either killed or wounded in Ukraine this year alone, the situation is scarier than ever. Danielle Bell, head of the UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine, sums up the grave nature of the situation the country faces. Civilians across Ukraine are facing levels of suffering we have not seen in over 3 years. The surge in long-range missile and drone strikes across the country has brought even more death and destruction to civilians far away from the front line. And William Taylor, a former career US diplomat who's spent time in Kyiv, is convinced that this is part of Putin's master plan to bring down morale across the nation. These attacks are on civilian targets, so it's an attempt to demoralize Ukrainians, to convince Ukrainians that they can't win. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky echoes those concerns. This is a clear escalation of terror by Russia, hundreds of Shaheds every night, constant strikes, and massive attacks against Ukrainian cities. However, if there's one thing the world has learned about Ukraine over the last few years, it's that one should never count this country out. Even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds and extraordinary adversity, Ukraine's strength and resilience shine through time and time again. Even now, with record-setting drone attacks, tragic civilian casualties, and ever-increasing aggression, Ukraine is not backing down. In fact, it's striking back, focusing on key pieces of infrastructure in Russia's drone empire, like the huge drone production plant in Yelabuga, situated in Russia's Tatarstan region, which is far to the east of Moscow and around 750 miles away from the Ukrainian border. The plant is said to be the biggest of its kind in Russia, playing a huge part in the Kremlin's plans to produce more than 5,000 drones every single month. It's also strategically positioned near various vital logistics routes, so drones can be quickly funneled from the factory towards the front lines and fired into Ukraine from various directions. Fortunately, the plant is also within reach of Ukraine's long-range offensive assets and has been successfully struck on numerous occasions so far. The latest strike came back in June, when Ukrainian forces sent a swarm of drones into the Tatarstan region and towards the plant. Russian reports say the drones were shot down, but debris fell from the skies onto the drone production plant, causing a fire to break out. Local airports in areas like Kazan and Nizhny Kamsk had to be temporarily shut down out of fear that more drones might be in the area, with photos and video footage from the scene showing thick clouds of dark grey smoke rising above the factory. In the wake of the strike, Russian officials attempted to downplay the situation. The local governor, Rustam Minikhanov, even claimed that it was an automobile plant, not the drone factory, that had been damaged. However, multiple other sources across social media platforms, like Telegram, confirmed that the true target was the drone factory. Soon after, the official account for the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine shared details on the strike. As part of reducing the enemy's capabilities to produce strike unmanned aerial vehicles, on June 15, units of the Special Operations Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, in cooperation with other components of the Defense Forces, struck an important facility of the Russian aggressor's military-industrial complex. The target was a UAV production facility in Yalabuga, Republic of Tatarstan, Russia. This military-industrial complex facility of the Russian occupiers is used to manufacture, test, and launch strike unmanned aerial vehicles across the territory of Ukraine, in particular on energy and civil infrastructure. It's been confirmed that the means of destruction reached the target area. The results are being clarified. The defense forces continue to take all measures to undermine the military economic potential of the Russian occupiers and force the Russian Federation to cease its armed aggression against Ukraine. Now, even if the factory was only temporarily shut down, it's still a win for Ukraine, as it helps to delay and disrupt the drone production process. And with fewer drones to work with, Russia instantly becomes less effective. Ukraine followed the Yelabuga attack with additional strikes on another big factory, the Progress plant in Cheboksary, a large city situated on the Volga River east of Moscow. The plant produces various important components for Russia's drone army and Iskander missiles. Namely, it makes Kometa adaptive antenna arrays, which are used in the likes of Iskanders and Shaheds to protect them from the effects of electronic warfare, making them more resilient and therefore more likely to strike their targets and deal damage to Ukraine. The plant also manufactures hydraulic systems and electromechanical drives used in Russian artillery systems, so it's a big contributor to the Kremlin's war machine. On June 9, Ukraine successfully struck the Cheboksary Progress plant. This was one of its deepest drone strikes on Russian territory, given that the factory is located around 800 miles from the border. Two of Ukraine's long-range drones hit the factory, with video footage from the scenes showing a massive fire breaking out. The General Staff Telegram account confirmed the strike. As part of reducing the enemy's ability to manufacture air attack weapons, on the night of June 9, units of the Unmanned Systems Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, in cooperation with other components of the Defense Forces of Ukraine, struck the facilities of JSC, VN, IIR Progress, LLC, ABS Electro, located in Cheboksary in the Chuvash Republic, Russia. The post went on to add that a large-scale fire had spread across the factory and that multiple major airports in cities like Kazan and Saratov had to be temporarily shut down. In the days and weeks that followed, Russia had to dedicate resources, money and manpower to repair the damaged plant and recommence operations. But Ukraine was ready and waiting to strike once more, undoing all of Russia's efforts in one swift strike. On July 5, the Progress plant was hit again, and once more, the General Staff of the Armed Forces shared the news on Telegram, writing, "On the night of July 5th, units of the Unmanned Systems Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, in cooperation with other components of the Defense Forces, struck an important facility of the Russian aggressor's military-industrial complex, JSC VNIIR Progress, Cheboksary, Chuvash Republic of the Russian Federation. The target hit was the facilities for the production of Kometa adaptive antenna arrays. The operation itself was a part of measures reducing the enemy's capabilities to manufacture high-precision weapons. Kometa adaptive antenna arrays are used in Shahed-type UAVs, Iskander K missiles, Unified Guidance and Correction Modules (UMPK) for guided aerial bombs and other high-precision weapons with which the enemy regularly attacks Ukraine, in particular civilian infrastructure. It has been confirmed that the means of destruction have reached the target area. Now, through this attack, Ukraine is letting Russia know that its factories are not safe and will not be safe for as long as the war goes on. Even those located deep inside Russian territory can and will be targeted. And just when the Russians think they've recovered from the last attack, another one might be right around the corner. In other words, Ukraine is putting Russia into that same sort of state of fear and panic that the Ukrainian people have been forced to endure for more than 3 years, but with one important difference. Ukraine only attacks viable targets, like factories that manufacture bombs and drone components. It doesn't lower itself to Russia's level by sending drones to blow up civilian structures like schools and hospitals. And Ukraine's campaign against the Russian drone empire doesn't end at the Progress plant. In a separate operation, which also took place earlier this month, the Ukrainian military carried out a long-range attack on a Russian factory that makes warheads for Shahed drones. The target was the JSC FNPC Research Institute of Applied Chemistry in Sergiev Posad, situated northeast of Moscow, over 300 miles from the Ukrainian border. The attack was conducted by Ukraine's newly formed Unmanned Systems Forces, USF, which was set up in 2024 and focuses exclusively on drone-based warfare. The USF shared a report of the strike on X. Operators of the 14th UAS Regiment of the Unmanned Systems Forces carried out a strike on JSC Federal Research and Production Center Research Institute of Applied Chemistry in the city of Sergiev Posad, Moscow Oblast, more than 500 kilometers from Ukraine's state border. The facility is part of the state-owned corporation Rostec and is under international sanctions due to its involvement in Russian military programs. It specializes in the development and production of over 500 types of special pyrotechnic devices for missile, space and artillery systems. Notably, it manufactures thermobaric warheads for Shahed-type kamikaze drones. A UAV strike was recorded in the target area, causing a fire and heavy smoke. It's also known that an electrical substation supplying power to the facility was hit. The results of the #deep strike are being clarified. Multiple videos from the scene confirmed the USF's report, showing the drone speeding towards the target and exploding on impact, as fires rage and puffs of black smoke cover the scene. Another successful strike hit the Kupol electromechanical plant, located in the city of Izhevsk. A major player in the Russian defense industry, Izhevsk is home to the Kalashnikov Group weapons manufacturer, and its Kupol electromechanical plant produces Garpia A-1 combat drones, Tor surface-to-air missile systems, and Shahed drone components too. Photos and footage captured by locals showed an increasingly familiar scene: smoke, fire, explosions, and Russian infrastructure falling apart. Reports also suggested that multiple major fires had broken out as a result of the attack, and 4 key workshops at the plant had been damaged in a huge blow to the plant's productivity. 2 more cogs in the Russian drone machine have also been successfully targeted in recent weeks: the Resonit Techno Park in Zubovo and the Progress plant in Michurinsk. The Resonit Technopark is located in the Moscow region, northeast of the Russian capital. It's a major electronics assembly plant responsible for creating critical microelectronic systems that are used for drone guidance and control, as well as circuit boards and components for other weaponry and military equipment. The General Staff Telegram account explained, "Explosions were recorded on the territory of the Resonit Technopark in Zubovo, Moscow region. This is a plant for the mass production and assembly of printed circuit boards and the production of electronics. Its products are widely used in the manufacture of high-tech weapons and equipment." The Michurinsk progress plant, meanwhile, is located many miles southeast of Moscow. It's one of the biggest factories in Russia's Tambov region, specializing in the production of high-tech military equipment, including control and guidance systems for missiles, drones and aircraft. Ukraine hit it twice in June. The first attack came late at night on June 6, when a Ukrainian drone collided with the factory, triggering a large fire. Local roads had to be closed down as emergency services rushed to the scene to control the blaze. Less than 2 weeks later, in the early hours of June 17, Ukraine dealt another blow. Numerous drones were dispatched towards targets across the Tambov and Kotovsk regions, including the Michurinsk progress plant. Locals report hearing the sounds of explosions and the buzz of drones in the sky. Each and every one of these attacks has been carefully planned out by Ukraine's armed forces. They all focus on important strategic targets that help to make Russia's drones so numerous and deadly. By attacking these locations, Ukraine can delay and weaken the Kremlin's increasingly powerful drone army. It can decrease the number of drones Russia has at its disposal, while also making them less effective by disrupting production of critical control systems, explosive warheads, and other core components. It's a sensible and intelligent strategic move from Ukraine, the perfect way to counter Russia's reliance on drones. And it comes at a very important time, as the Kremlin is not just ramping up the size and frequency of its drone attacks, but is also taking big steps towards increasing drone production and investing in new technologies. Recent reports have revealed, for example, that Russia's latest Shaheds are equipped with larger payloads than before, including both thermobaric and cluster munitions to damage a wider range of targets. In a particularly cruel and evil move, the new Shahed drones can also come with delayed fuse explosives, which are specifically designed to injure or even kill emergency responders who arrive at the sites of drone attacks in an attempt to help the injured victims and save lives. Thankfully, by targeting drone facilities like the Progress plant and the Kupol factory, Ukraine's forces are directly preventing hundreds, if not thousands, of civilian casualties. And its systematic campaign against drone production is proving effective, reducing the volume, accuracy, and lethality of Russians' drone swarms. Ukraine can't stop the drones entirely, and will undoubtedly continue to face large swarms on a daily basis for months, if not years to come. But it's doing the best it can, with limited resources, to battle back. Bit by bit, factory by factory, it's wiping out the Kremlin's drone empire. In addition, Ukraine has also recently bolstered its defensive capabilities to protect cities and civilians more effectively against drone strikes. It's received innovative aerial defenses from its allies, like the Shark micro-light aircraft, supplied by the Slovakian manufacturer Shark Aero, and specially designed to detect and destroy Russian drones using simple but effective electronic warfare tactics. Ukraine also regularly relies on powerful Western air defense systems like the German Iris-T SLM and American Patriot system to keep its skies safe. The country has also worked hard at creating its own drone-busting innovations, like the recently unveiled Sky Sentinel turrets. Powered by AI, these machine gun turrets can lock onto various drones, calculate the precise flight paths, and fire cheap standard ammunition to blast them out of the sky with extraordinary precision. The Sky Sentinels are even capable of taking out missiles and add another layer to Ukraine's increasingly complex and powerful aerial defense systems. Now, find out more about these awesome AI turrets in our recent video, detailing exactly how they work and why they're such a game-changing force. You might also like to check out our list of the 7 deadliest Western weapons Ukraine is using to battle back against Russia, or our in-depth look at how Japan just gave Ukraine an all-seeing eye in the sky, making it impossible for Putin's forces to hide. And finally, make sure to subscribe to our trusted news channel too, if you haven't already, to stay in the loop on all important developments from the war in Ukraine.